Most people believe their financial problems are personal. Bad decisions, weak discipline, not earning enough. That is the story we are told, over and over again. But here is the uncomfortable mystery. What if millions of people, across different countries, generations, and income levels, all made the same bad decisions at the same time, without coordinating, without knowing each other, and without meaning to? What if the damage to your finances did not begin with you at all? Tonight, we are not chasing quick tips or motivation. We are pulling back the curtain on 5 economic forces that quietly reshaped your financial life long before you noticed them. These forces did not arrive suddenly. They unfolded step by step over decades. And by the time most people realized something was wrong, the damage was already done. Let's start at the beginning. The setup, a system that promised stability after the Second World War. Much of the world agreed on a simple idea: if governments managed money carefully, if banks were regulated, and if wages grew alongside productivity, ordinary people could build stable lives. For a while, that promise held. One income could support a family, savings accounts earned real interest. Debt was limited and used cautiously. Housing was expensive but reachable. This period created a powerful belief that the system worked naturally, that if you played by the rules, things would be fine. That belief would later become dangerous, because while people were trusting the system itself was changing, slowly, quietly, legally. And that leads us to the first reason. Reason 1. Money lost its anchor originally. Money was tied to something real. Gold, physical reserves, limits. This created friction. Governments could not endlessly create money without consequences. That changed in the early 1970s when major economies detached their currencies from gold. At first, nothing dramatic happened. In fact, it felt freeing. Governments could now respond to crises faster. Banks could expand lending. Growth accelerated, but the cause and effect chain had begun. When money became unlimited, its value became political. And political money always gets used to delay pain, not prevent it. Over time, more money chased the same amount of goods. Prices rose slowly at first, then faster. Inflation became normal. Savings quietly lost purchasing power. Wages struggled to keep up. People did not feel robbed. They felt confused. They worked harder, but saved less. They earned more, but afforded less. The anchor was gone, and without it, money slowly drifted away from the people holding it. Reason 2. Debt replaced income as inflation crept in. Something else filled the gap. Debt, in the past, debt was a bridge, a temporary tool to reach something meaningful. But once wages stopped keeping pace with living costs, debt became a substitute for income. Credit cards expanded, student loans exploded, mortgages stretched longer and larger. At first, debt felt empowering. You could buy now, live now, solve problems instantly. But the system depended on one fragile assumption, that tomorrow would always be better than today. For a while, it was. Until it wasn't. As debt grew faster than income, a tipping point emerged. Monthly obligations became permanent. Interest became invisible labor. People were no longer working to build wealth. They were working to service the past. The rise phase was seductive. The breaking point was inevitable. Reason 3. Asset prices were engineered upward while wages stagnated. Something else soared: assets, stocks, real estate, financial products. This was not accidental. Low interest rates made borrowing cheap for investors. Central banks injected liquidity into markets during every crisis. Risk was rewarded, while caution was punished. If you owned assets, you benefited. If you relied on wages, you fell behind. Housing became the clearest example. Homes transformed from places to live into financial vehicles. Prices rose faster than incomes rent followed. People were told housing was expensive because demand was high. But demand was fueled by cheap money and speculation. The result was brutal. Those who bought early gained wealth. Those who waited paid more. Those who never entered paid forever. The system did not fail equally. It sorted people. Reason 4. Financial complexity replaced transparency. As the system grew more fragile, it also grew more complex. Financial products multiplied. Terms became longer. Fine print expanded. Complexity served a purpose. It shifted responsibility downward. When something went wrong, individuals were blamed for not understanding, for not reading enough, for not planning better. Meanwhile, risks were packaged, spread, and hidden. Pensions were replaced with individual retirement accounts. Guaranteed outcomes became market-based guesses. People were told they had more control. In reality, they carried more risk. This created a psychological trap. When the system failed, people internalized the blame. They worked harder, saved more aggressively, took on even more risk. The machine fed on guilt and confusion. Reason 5. Crises became business models historically. Crises were warnings, signals to change behavior. In the modern system, crises became opportunities. Each downturn justified emergency measures. Each emergency expanded balance sheets. Each expansion inflated assets further. Losses were socialized, gains were privatized. For ordinary people, this meant instability became permanent. Jobs became less secure. Prices reset higher after each crisis. Savings never recovered their former power. People were told recovery was happening, but recovery looked different depending on where you stood. Markets recovered quickly. Household finances did not. The fallout. Living inside the consequences. By the time these 5 forces converged, the outcome was baked in. People felt behind even when doing everything right. Younger generations delayed milestones. Older generations watched savings erode. This was not a single collapse. It was a slow squeeze. No alarms. No clear villain. Just a steady transfer of stability away from the many toward the few. Failed fixes. Why nothing seems to work. Governments responded with programs. Banks adjusted regulations. Individuals were offered advice. Budget better. Invest earlier. Take more risk. But these fixes addressed behavior, not structure. They treated symptoms while preserving causes, and so the pattern repeated. Modern parallels. The pattern is still running today. The same signals are flashing. Debt levels are higher than ever. Asset prices remain detached from income. Money creation continues at historic scale. Technology has changed the surface. The engine underneath is the same. Different tools, same incentives. The question is not whether the pattern will repeat. It already is. 3 takeaways. First, your financial stress is not a personal failure. Understanding the system matters more than blaming yourself. Second, income alone no longer guarantees security. Structure matters as much as effort. Third, systems change slowly, then suddenly. Pay attention before the next shift becomes obvious. The open question is simple, but uncomfortable. If this system depends on constant expansion, rising debt, and permanent intervention, what happens when it can no longer grow? That answer is not written yet, but understanding the forces at work gives you something most people never get: clarity. If this helps you see the bigger picture, stay curious. Subscribe for more stories that explain how power, money, and systems really work.